After paying $8,700 for a private rooftop, I arrived at my own promotion dinner to discover that the event had been moved to a sticky note. Ethan's first day plus is being celebrated. Next, I looked at Facebook. Mom shared, "Some victories are truly significant." I simply grinned. At 1:26 a.m., I went home and mailed them a lockbox. On FaceTime, my sister was yelling while holding the box and asking if anyone else had noticed. I arrived at my own promotion dinner, which was wired 2 weeks in advance, and included a private rooftop custom menu heat lamps and a view of the skyline. The cost was $8,700. It was meant to be easy. Just one evening in which I allowed myself to feel proud. Not ostentatious, simply acknowledged. I was 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Except for the faint hum of ambient jazz coming through the ceiling, the lift ride up was quiet. I emerged onto a rooftop that was strung with white linens and gentle lights. Iced champagne. I was instantly recognized by the staff. "Mr. Black, once again, congratulations." I thanked them, grinned, and turned to look around. I looked at my watch. Perhaps I was ahead of schedule. They might have been late. Then I noticed it. On the main welcome sign where my name was printed in silver foil, there was a bright yellow sticky note. Only 5 Sharpie scribbled words. The event was rescheduled, celebrating the first day of Ethan's life. Additionally, just a redirect with no apology or explanation. As if the entire evening had been a scheduling mishap. I remained motionless. I simply stood there, allowing my sleeves to be bitten by the chilly air. Hesitantly, the manager came forward. "Respected sir, your mom requested that the event be rescheduled. It has to do with a family update." His tone faltered. He appeared just as uneasy as I did. Still, I thanked him. Be calm. Far away. Next, I looked at Facebook. And there it was. An image of my sister's son, Ethan, clutching a piece of paper with a gold star on it. Mom wrote, "Some wins actually matter," in the caption. That was the time. No fury, no spectacle. Simply be silent. I approached the table where the champagne was placed. Left after taking one flute. I didn't elaborate. Didn't pose inquiries. I just got home. Nobody made a call. After returning to my flat, I filled the wash basin with the champagne. When I dropped the bottle in the recycling bin, it made a hollow clink. I mailed the box to them after that. Tiny, black lock. No explanation, no instructions. I just sent it along with a note. I figured this could be useful at 1:26 a.m. My phone came to life. FaceTime. My sister was the one. She was yelling, not upset. I'm afraid. She had a red face, untidy hair, utilizing both hands to hold the box. "Did anyone else witness this?" she shouted. I didn't respond, simply gazed at her. At that point, the silence wasn't a pause, so the call was ended. It served as defense. I had trouble falling asleep. Not because I was upset. It's not even the FaceTime. But because I saw it at last. Everything. The trend. Long after the call was over, I remained seated in my office chair. The package is still being tracked as delivered. I let the reel play out while I gazed at the ceiling. The dinner wasn't the point. Not at all. Years ago, it began. Perhaps when I first got home from college and learned that my belongings would be moved into the garage to create room for Ethan's playroom. No boxes, no warning. It's just a cardboard pile of memories next to the lawnmower. Or it might have been that Christmas, the one following my advancement within the company. I had just struck May. I got presents for everyone, actual ones, thoughtful ones. My father unlocked the watch that I had personalized with his initials. I thought it must be nice to have money for nonsense after taking a look at it. They chuckled. They were always giggling. My mother asked if I could assist with the mortgage that same evening, only for a couple of months. For 4 years, I made payments. Thank you, but no, not a word. Then there was the occasion when the family phone plan was altered. Claimed it was too costly. My service dropped in the middle of the call, so I found out. They continued to use Ethan's tablet. Mine cut without warning. They didn't say it aloud. They were not required to. They never failed to convey their message. You're helpful, not significant. Each flashback was like a lightning strike. I was not invited to Dad's retirement party, but I did pay for the prawns. I rented a storage unit for their excess inventory. Suddenly, I was responsible for that. I had never heard of the time they booked a trip using my American Express until I noticed the ticket charges. First rate, not one that has my name on it. Then came my sister's golden child, Ethan. Have you got a new bike? Dinner for a celebration. Played a part in a school play. Received an A+. A complete takeover of my event on the rooftop. When their car broke down, I bought them a new one. They wanted to know if I could also pay for the insurance. Milestones were never the focus. It had to do with getting my money, keeping quiet, and using my systems. They didn't simply ignore me. I was the foundation of their lives. And I allowed that fact to sink in for the first time. Similar to a bitter pill that simply becomes clear and ceases to be bitter. The sun was never me. I served as the automatic deposit, the backbone, and the infrastructure. They were now in a panic. I mailed them, but I left the box behind not because they hurt me. It wasn't deserted. There was a printed packet inside. Dozens of pages emails approving the use of my cards, bank statements, invoices, transfer histories, and subscriptions. Everything they relied upon and everything I represented to them was arranged, labeled, and numbered. The last page. A message in bold black letters. This system is permanently unavailable. My sister went into a tailspin because of that. Not remorse, not regret. Clarity. Silence they thought would conceal everything. Until I revealed the system. However, I had shut off the tap. They also knew they had nothing left to steal in my absence. Silently. It was more than a meal. They didn't want to hear the wake-up call. Now, however, they were unable to see it now. My wake-up time was 5:03 a.m. It was dark on my phone. No FaceTime. No messages. Only that call's echo. I took a seat on my bed's edge. Not out of fear, but with a racing heart. It was freedom. Chilly. Accurate. I put on my work clothes and got to work. 5:07 a.m. I went to the joint bank account and logged in. I selected Freeze debit card. They have not yet received any alerts or confirmation messages. Like a switch it was. They continued to believe the account was real. Simply had no idea how broken it was. 5:12 a.m. I transferred last month's mortgage contribution back to my own savings labeled repayment. I saved the screenshot. Locked file. 5:17 a.m. I emailed their insurance provider. Please cancel policy number effective immediately. Notify me when done. I attached proof of my ownership and payment history. As quiet but firm as a gavel. 5:24 a.m. I revoked permissions to automatic payments, utilities, phone plan, Netflix, Amazon Prime. One by one, I unsubscribed accounts. Password changes. Card removals. No emails, no notices. Just gone. 5:31 a.m. I called my mortgage broker. The call dropped halfway. No matter. I sent a follow-up email payment on behalf of Smith family. Discontinued. Please send all future bills to me at this address. Thank you. The automated reply felt like the click of a lock. 5:45 a.m. I opened my lawyer's app, selected a standard non-disclosure, and cease and desist template, changed names, attached the box's PDF for chain of custody sent. No aggression, just legal gravity. 5:52 a.m. I went in my work email, typed a message for HR. I will be disabling my company card that family had been using. Please forward any charges made after June 27th to me personally. Scheduled to descend at 8 a.m., 6:10 a.m. I opened our family group chat. I hit leave group. No goodbye, no emojis, just exit. 6:15 a.m. I deleted all autofill information for shared addresses and credit cards on Google. Still sober, still silent, but every reference to them was being scrubbed. 6:23 a.m. I set notification alerts for all revoked services. If when they tried to log in, I would know and collect. 6:45 a.m. The Airbnb for Mom's summer reunion was still booked on my card. I canceled it, received a partial refund. I printed the refund email. Another page in the packet. 7 a.m. I filed a ticket with the phone carrier. Dispute unauthorized use of my line. Terminate service as of June 27th. Provide billing history. No mention of who they are. Let them connect the dots. 7:15 a.m. lunch break. Just coffee and a granola bar. I use the time to sync all PDF evidence of every change. Bank, lawyer, mortgage policies I organized by date, marked with tags frozen. 5:07 a.m. card revoked. 5:17 a.m. diary. It became a weapon of clarity. 8 a.m. HR email said family car disabled for charges. This was the first ripple beyond me. I braced for response. 8:15 a.m. I called Mom to cancel the dentist appointment she had made on my card dispute invoice. She is not me. An almost smile moment. I also canceled it. She sent the text at 8:30 a.m. The family card is missing. You no longer have it. I sent a simple message. I didn't hold out. 9 a.m. The bank card confirmed this to me. Disabled frozen card. 9:15 a.m. Confirmed cancellation of insurance. 9:30 a.m. When the group chat was canceled, the Netflix account was disabled, but it is still silent. Every confirmation felt like a brick coming loose from the house they had constructed on my back. The packet was finished by 10 in the morning. I printed everything, placed it in a clean binder. Timelines, screenshots, letters, emails. A final cover page was added by me. Revocation of the system. All claims have been canceled. I haven't yet given it to them, with the public stage afternoon that would happen later. I could sense the subtle tension, but I worked as usual at my desk. They wouldn't find me, but they would realize it was scramble. It was my silence. I sent a calendar invite to his mother, father, sister, and even Ethan via his mother's account by 4:30 p.m. Dependencies within the family system are reviewed. 7 p.m., 5 p.m. on Friday. No link to the video. No actual place. An electronic Gantt chart. They answered. What's this, Mom, Dad? Shall we go? Are you serious, sister? Everyone is welcome. Everyone is informed. 5 p.m. Searched the group notifications. 6 p.m. Sister sent a FaceTime request. Refused. I replied, before we talk, please go over the packet. 6:30 p.m. One more call. One more text. More inbox. Spam. Still no word. Still methodical. At 7 p.m., hit the invitation flew open. Only folder access and the shared drive packet.pdf are provided. There is no link. At the same time, they both opened the PDF. With a sigh, each of them moved their world behind their pupils. I did not apologize. I left no opportunity for persuasion. Only this. Here is a breakdown of all the phone lines, deposits, subscriptions, and service payment accounts you used after June 11th, 2025. Now everything has been reassigned, canceled, or frozen. You have lost your authorization. Get in touch with me if you want access back. The silent streak in the group chat. Notifications buzzed on my phone. Mom looked at the packet. Dad looked. Sister took 2 looks. At 7:05 p.m., the quietness ended. We must talk, Mom. Dad, this is absurd. This is crazy. This cannot be done simply. Even though they bombarded the chat, I didn't respond. I observed. I was not required to be correct. All I had to do was not be used, and I grinned while they typed. Since freedom doesn't make noise, it's calculating, icy, and unchangeable. I have also finished being infrastructure. Like evidence in a trial, I sat in my den with a dim lamp above my binder. My phone kept buzzing. I shook hands firmly today, unlike Tuesday. The quiet was more powerful. 7:10 p.m. The first group chat was mum. This is treachery. Families are not like businesses. I read it. Indifferent, but not flaming. 7:12 p.m. Sister FaceTimed once more. One more try. It buzzed on my phone. A call from a sister. I gazed without a response. The caller hung up. Then a barrage of text messages. Respond to me. Mom is going crazy. Tell me you'll return it, please. I waited. Allow them to heap it on. 7:20 p.m. That emailed HR at my firm copying me, asking if I'd made any unusual transactions or suspicious changes to company expense accounts. SEC, Mom and Sister too. I didn't answer. 7:25 p.m. The group chat exploded. Dad, are you doing this because you hate us? Sister, I can't believe you would do this. Mom. Think about Mom, your father. But I stayed silent. 7:30 p.m. A Ping law firm, email. My lawyer wrote, "We have received defamation threats from Mrs. Smith requesting retraction and handover of sensitive family financials. Please advise if you wish to proceed with motion to dismiss." He forwarded it to me. I filed it mentally as expected. 7:35 p.m. A second FaceTime Dad. He looked disheveled, angry, hurt. Son, please talk to me. His voice caught. I let it go to voicemail. 7:40 p.m. Sister texts, "We're going to the media next. Then we'll tell them how ungrateful you are. Then you're a monster." 7:45 p.m. A file zip through my HR email screenshots from Family Messenger. Mom texting a cousin. "He is erratic. We need to sound the alarm." No proof, just slander. 7:50 p.m. Another lawyer. Ping. This time sister's husband blasting me with threat of elder exploitation. My lawyer archived it. I archived it, two-part of evidence. 7:55 p.m. The binder sat closed in the lamp's cone. It was just paper. But to them, it was fight. I finally opened the group chat. All tight. No edits. "Mom, you don't understand desperation." "Dad, your sister's been crying." "Sister, I'm doing everything I can to prevent Ethan from viewing his favorite uncle in this light. No pleading, no explanation." I typed a single response. "This is what you selected." I sent it. After that, I removed the message. There's no reason to participate. 8 p.m. Quiet. After that, Mom's FaceTime rings twice. Rejected that SMS. One text message from an old blue tick iPhone. Then the unexpected happened. 8:05 p.m. That phone is picked up by the hospital. Mom's voice was shaky and strained. "They failed to process our home mortgage payment. We are unsure of what to do." Quiet. It dawned on me then that they had followed the packet. All of the wire transfers, subscriptions, and withholdings were abstract. It was authentic. Instant. Concrete. 8:10 p.m. One more FaceTime. Each of the three. Father, mother, sister. Pixels were radiating tension. Dad's eyes were red-rimmed. My sister's mascara was running, and my mother's gaze was calculating and hesitant. Instead of crying, they begged. Requests. "Mom, turn it around. We'll reimburse you, sister. Everything was ruined by you." "We can fix this, Dad. Simply speak with us." They bided their time. I remained silent. She looked at the telephone. "Just talk." I unmuted the call after muting it. Turn up the volume. Nothing. After that, tap at 8:15 p.m., the group chat blew up once more. Mom, Dad, I have no idea who you are anymore. I brought you up better. You're not my son's sister. Then, your niece asked for you, sister. According to Ethan, my uncle no longer wants me. Keep quiet. Strike me. Not grief. Clarity. This had nothing to do with guilt. It was a boundary. 8:20 p.m. I accessed the lawyer template. Get ready to stop slandering others. Screenshots were attached and sent to the lawyer's inbox. 8:25 p.m. In the group chat, they replied, Mom, you're crazy. Sister, we're reporting harassment to the police. Will be granted custody. Dad, legacy is destroyed. I wrote another response. You will be notified by counsel if you publish another defamatory message or bring any legal action. This is over. Clearly sent. Calmly. 8:30 p.m. For a moment, the silence returned. 8:35 p.m. We agree to your terms, Mom. Until you get in touch with us, we won't get in touch with you. Mom, treaty of peace. Behind it was chaos. They sensed the public's disintegration. 8:45 p.m. I shut down my laptop. The binder didn't open. Sentinel was the packet's position. The room was filled with silence. I later found out that a warning weekend notice had been issued because of my dad's mortgage late fee. Mom's dentist changed her appointment. Citing stress, sister took down Ethan's request for my video. They regained control over spending, but on their own terms, and I'm all right now. The fight began with a box, which made me smile. There was a wall at the end. They made an effort to exert control. They have limits. They attempted to minimize me. I responded with boundaries. They anticipated quiet. I'm still standing because I provided resolution. For shame, they desired silence. I told them the truth instead. It started with a post on LinkedIn. Just a picture of that night's rooftop. String lights are still glowing, the table is set, and the chairs are empty. For a promotional dinner, a custom rooftop space worth $800 has been reserved. No one arrived. A last-minute change was made to the event. Why Dad Ethan received an A+. My mom shared a few wins that are truly significant. This is my family's perception of me. Just receipts with no names or tags. It had more than 9,000 reactions by dawn. Strangers' remarks. Tales of treachery. Those who are aware of the pattern. Who was the occupant? I received a message at noon from a recruiter from a Fortune 500 company. We spent some time following your work. Will you be free next week after that brave post? I didn't respond right away. I wasn't finished yet. I then opened the folder containing my documents. Every wire transfer to my parents and every bank statement. The vehicle I purchased. I paid for the wedding. I had dental insurance. Every item is listed. I uploaded a second picture and one page with the binder's redacted details that was still readable. Warrant date 25-34 months for a mortgage. I paid for it. Monthly insurance premium, $200. July 1st has been canceled. 40% of the rooftop dinner was refunded after no shows. The note at the bottom follows. When someone stays on the silent support system for an extended period of time, they finally emerge into the light. The shift occurred at that point. My inbox was overflowing. Former classmates, colleagues, distant relatives, even one wrote, "We were informed that you were unstable. I'm ashamed because I thought it was true." One more. "You were always the quiet one in my opinion. I was unaware of your role as the backbone." The requests from the media followed. 1 podcast, 3 blogs. Although I turned down interviews, I did agree to one thing. The Invisible Sun is the title of a feature essay. Within a day, the article went viral. It was brutal, honest, and cold. Not resentful. Only screenshots, canceled payments, and receipts. The Facebook post, the sticky note. My sister's screaming voicemail. Did anyone else witness this? The last paragraph. This was not written with their harm in mind, so that no one else would think that quantity equates to disposable, I wrote it. Until they erased me, I gave. The access that broke the spell was then deleted. My sister deleted her Instagram account on the third day. My dad said I had overreacted, so he deleted the post. Mom, she wrote about how complicated family is in a 3-paragraph Facebook status update. I remained silent. All I wanted was for everyone to see it. After that, I took one more action. I authorized my attorney to send the entire binder to 2 recipients: the accountant for the family, the legal team of my employer. I wanted the record to be clear, not retaliation. They had used rebalancing my silence as a weapon. My advantage was that, because I only needed to present the receipts when the lies came out, and there are still pages to go. I was surprised that they showed up. Not after the binder, not after the post on LinkedIn, not after the quiet. Families like mine, however, never back down. They adjust. The wedding took place in the late afternoon of a Sunday. My dad used the same rhythm when we were kids. I pulled the door open. All 3 of them were there. A Tupperware dish is held by Mom as if we were still playing normally. In the jacket is Dad. Last Christmas, I purchased them. Despite the clouds, my sister wore sunglasses. I remained silent, simply moved aside. I didn't invite them in, though. We were standing in the corridor. I had never felt more or less at home. Mom was the first. She spoke softly, practiced. We had a lengthy conversation. Things weren't handled well by us. I remained silent. The Tupperware was hers. Chicken your favorite. Still warm. I refused to accept it. Dad went after it. Not as smooth, more fragile. This family is amazing. It always has. However, we created something. It's worth repairing. I remained silent. Sister. Now, are you even concerned about what Ethan thinks of you? I said that at that point. Be calm. Measured, even. Ethan's A+ was more important to you than my promotion. You clearly stated your priorities at that point. Mom blinked. That wasn't the case. I gave a nod. Until the receipts are printed, it never is. Dad moved forward. He lowered his voice. You are our son. You will always be. There must be some significance to that. I gave him a look. You're not incorrect. It matters. I gave you everything for that reason. It was being extracted until I realized it wasn't being given. Quiet. Mom's hand shook a little. What are you hoping we'll say? I took a deep, patient breath out. Nothing. Apologies are not why I'm here. I'm here to refuse. They appeared perplexed. So, I explained. I'm not going to reactivate the accounts, sorry. I'm not going to replenish the mortgage buffer. No, I'm no longer your fallback. Under her breath, my sister muttered something. I looked over at her. Money wasn't the reason I left you. You never saw me, so I left. Not at all. You witnessed contribution and function. A system that you could use for free. She folded her arms. You always believed that you were superior to us. It nearly made me laugh. I believed that I was a part of you. When you gave my seat to someone with a foreign discount coupon, I simply stopped believing it. It was a hit. Dad made one final attempt. We had no intention of hurting you. I gave him a direct look. However, you did, and you continued to do it. I'm finished now. Mom's voice broke. Now what? You simply leave? I gave a nod. Indeed. Silently. My piece, my name, and all of my passwords have been updated. Stunned, as if the door had already closed, they stood there. I took a step back without yelling, swearing, or crying. One last sentence. There was more than one dinner at stake. It had to do with years of alienation, and I decided to leave today. I then closed the door. Click, not a slam, just a conclusion. Story 2. After taking $20,000 out of my sister's retirement, my parents attempted to raise my rent. I left them to deal with her mess on their own once I moved out. I'm a typical 25-year-old who put a lot of effort into finishing college and landing my first teaching position in an elementary school. Although it's not a high-paying job, I like working with kids, so it's worth it. However, money is scarce, particularly in the beginning. I have been living with my parents in the suburban home where I was raised because of this. Although it's not the most interesting setup, it works. As my father used to say, they charge me a reasonable rent and I purchase my own groceries. Furthermore, I assisted with tasks like mowing the lawn, repairing household items, and even organizing the garage after my dad suffered a back injury last summer. It is only temporary, but it is not glamorous. My goal was to save money, remain for a few years, and eventually acquire a place of my own. Easy, isn't it? Until my elder sister, Brielle, came back into the scene, everything was simple. To put it simply, 32-year-old Brielle has never been the responsible kind. Growing up, she was the most well-behaved youngster. She could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, but I'm not sure if it was because she was the eldest or just because they liked her. She has 2 college dropouts. She lacked motivation the first time. She protested about the instructor's excessive demands the second time. She's never worked for more than a few months in a job. She would quit and make up an excuse that it wasn't her fault when things didn't go her way. Our parents were always there to support her. Is your rent past due? They would cover the cost. Has your vehicle broken down? They would pay for the repair. Have you been given a citation for speeding? While writing the check, Mom would mutter about how the cops prey on young women. In the meanwhile, I was taking out loans to pay for school and saving money for college by cleaning toilets at a diner. I believed that Brielle had been living alone for the last few years. As it turned out, she had been living in different apartments, always behind on her rent, and depending on our parents to support her. Before she approached me one day and casually said that she was pregnant, I was unaware of this. I'm not here to criticize people's decisions in life, but let's use Brielle as an example. The situation was far from steady. She had been seeing the child's father for a few months, and based on my observations, he wasn't thrilled about the unexpected pregnancy. As soon as she told him, he essentially disappeared. This should serve as a wake-up call for Brielle, right? Maybe she recognized she needed to order her life at this point. However, no. Rather, she hurried straight to her parents, who went into mending mode right away. They started remodeling the basement into a little apartment for her within a week. Even a kitchenette was constructed. I heard Mom mention drawing from their retirement funds, but I didn't inquire about the source of the funds. To be honest, I didn't care about it, so I tried to avoid becoming involved. They could decide to hurl cash at Brielle. I could already see the writing on the wall, though. My parents have a tendency to cause problems for everyone else. They seem to think that no matter how great of a disaster she has caused, we must all work together to help her. I told myself at first that I wouldn't mind. In order to provide Brielle her own place, a tiny apartment was being constructed in the basement. I thought she would move in, take care of herself, and I would get on with my life. Seeing everyone go above and above for her once more was a little annoying, but I made an effort to ignore it. That way of thinking worked for about 2 months. Then little items started to accumulate. First, even though I was working full-time and usually returned home exhausted, my mother began urging me that I should spend more time with Brielle because she was going through so much. Then the subliminal guilt trip started. You know Brielle doesn't have anyone else to lean on right now, Mom would add. Being pregnant and unmarried is really difficult. She would do this while staring at me as though I were supposed to solve all of Brill's problems. Dad's condition has not improved significantly. He would always find a way to bring up Brielle in the conversation. Riley, you ought to be thankful for everything in your life. During supper, he passed the salt and died. You're not as fortunate as everyone else. Luckily, I was barely making ends meet, attempting to save money and build a career. Brielle, meanwhile, received a fully renovated apartment and continued financial and emotional support. However, when I overheard Mom and Dad conversing one evening, things became heated. I was in the kitchen brewing tea while they were in the living room. Once the baby comes, she's going to need a lot of help, she said. Dad said, of course we'll all help. Everything, Mom asked. Well, Riley, you and me. Dad said as though it were obvious. I nearly let my cup fall. Although they had not disclosed this plan to me, it was clear that they had already decided I would participate. I became nervous at that point. I could tell they were working on something that would bring me into Brill's mess whether I wanted it or not, even if I didn't know the specifics yet. The terrible feeling was made worse by Ariel's repeated visits. She would fall on the couch and complain about how hard it was to be pregnant and how awful her ex's departure was. She would mention in passing that I was lucky to have a steady career and no kids to worry about. In the back of my mind, I kept asking myself, why does this always fall on me? But I bit my tongue every time to avoid starting a fight. I had a terrible feeling that something was going to happen by the time we had supper that evening. I knew it wouldn't be good, but I couldn't tell what it was. I had the unshakable sensation that something was about to happen when we sat down to dinner. When everyone is behaving too casually, as though they are all hiding something from you, you can tell. It felt like that. Brielle was looking through her phone as her parents talked about the neighbor's new fence and other unrelated subjects. It seemed forced, like they were holding off on dumping something on me until the right moment. My father's favorite dinner was spaghetti. We must talk about food as a family. I have no idea why. Not that pasta makes bad news any easier to take in. I made an effort not to overthink things and to focus on my plate. Mom cleared her throat, though, around halfway through the meal. "Thus, we have been considering," she murmured, glancing at her father. I went cold. Those remarks never lead to anything positive. "Brielle will require assistance as she returns home," Mom remarked in a friendly tone. "What specifically do you need assistance with?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Before she could reply with the baby, Dad leaped in. "Naturally. It will be difficult for Ariel to handle everything by herself because she has a lot on her plate right now." I turned to face Brielle, who continued to browse through her phone as like this subject didn't concern her. She didn't even raise her head. "All okay, but how is that related to me?" I put down my fork and asked. As though they were attempting to figure out how to phrase whatever they were about to say, my parents exchanged one of those looks. As a teacher and everything my mother remarked, "You already live here and you're really good with kids. We decided that you should assist with babysitting." Assistance. I raised an eyebrow and asked again. Dad gave a kind nod. "Yes. Just watch the baby until Brielle gets back on her feet, you know. It would not be a full-time position. Just when you're at home." I was shocked by what I heard. "Do you want me to work a full-time job and watch a newborn?" Mom said, "Well, you have 3 more days at home. Additionally, you don't pay market rent." "As if that mattered," Dad replied. I looked at them, attempting to decipher their question. They weren't only requesting little help, they wanted me to do a whole second job for nothing. I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "Wait, let me clear this up. You want me to look after Brill's baby mom's side when I get home from teaching all day, like I was intentionally being tough?" "Riley, it's not like that. We will all contribute. Everything." I said it again. Dad said yes. All of us are related. Family members also support one another. Then as Riley was using her phone, Brielle looked up. She smirked as she yelled, "I had no idea that assisting your sister meant so much to you." Below the table, I could feel my hands clenching into fists. Her speech sounded so entitled that I didn't want to lose my temper. "That's not the point," I said. "I work for myself and have my own life. I can't simply leave everything to watch the kids. You're being self-centered." Mom spoke harshly at first. "Real is now going through a really difficult period. Helping her is the least you can do. Why am I supposed to correct her decisions?" I raised my voice and asked, even though I tried to keep my cool. "Her age is 32. She is no longer a child. Brielle abandoned me." "Do you mean me?" "Take a look. Take a look. That's sufficient." Dad spoke in a harsh tone. "Together, we are in this. We expect you to contribute since you live with us whether you like it or not." "Family," I said. "Rent is something I pay. I purchase my own food. I assist with household tasks. How is that insufficient? I could sense the tension in the air as the room fell silent for a while. Brielle just sat there content as though she had already triumphed. Mom said, maybe we should reconsider your living arrangement if you're not willing to assist. I felt sick to my stomach. Are you saying you'll throw me out? Naturally, not, Mom said quickly. However, we might need to talk about raising your rent if you're unwilling to make a larger contribution. I was shocked by what I heard. If you can call it that, I had done all in my power to be a good renter. They were now attempting to use guilt to get me to perform tasks that weren't mine. Are you really going to do this? With trembling voice, I asked. I didn't want to be Brill's free nanny. Will you penalize me for that? As Dad said, it's not punishment. It has to do with belonging to the family. Additionally, it's about you supporting Brielle as you always have. I got up from the table and answered. You're attempting to include me in it now. Mom shouted, don't talk about your sister like that. I'm finished. I turned to face the stairs and stated that. Do you wish to assist Brielle? Okay, but don't include me. With my heart hammering against my chest, I hurried upstairs and closed the door to my room. What had just happened was unbelievable to me. Although I had always knew my parents liked Brielle, this was something else entirely. It appeared to be a matter of control. They planned to keep me living with them so they could force me to comply with their wishes. I found Brielle's smug smile to be the most remembered part of the talk. As if nothing were amiss, she sat there looking through her phone and hardly spoke. And I guess it wasn't in her view. Her parents were already making every effort to please her, and now they were trying to include me as well. That night, I doubt I slept for more than a couple of hours. I would mentally relive the discussion each time I closed my eyes, recalling all the things I should have said, but didn't. When my alarm went off the following morning, I was still irritated, but I also felt stuck. I couldn't simply walk away. I thought about moving out and having a house of my own, but it wasn't that easy. I had only been a teacher for a few months and was still trying to save costs. I couldn't live alone on my salary since the rent in the area was too high. At home, the following 3 days were strained. My parents were clearly angry with me, but they began using passive-aggressive language instead of talking about it. Having so much spare time after work must be pleasant. One evening when I entered the house, Mom made a remark. Yeah, some people don't have that luxury, Dad said, giving his newspaper a fleeting glance. I chose to ignore them and went straight to my room. I had no interest in arguing at this moment. I didn't have the energy to cope with it, and I knew that whatever I said would just make things worse. In the meantime, Riel was enjoying life to the fullest. She was not even yet a resident. She acted as though she already owned the house, though, and was there almost every day saturating the living room with her possessions. As if it were no big problem, she would leave her shoes on the couch, her purse on the dining table, and strange shopping bags scattered about. She was eating ice cream and watching a reality program on the couch when I arrived home one evening. When I walked in, she didn't even recognize me. She glanced up, gave me a grudging hello, and went back to watching TV. For a brief while, I waited for her to say anything else, like an apology or just a simple thank you for not losing her cool in the face of the circumstance, but she didn't. Half of my groceries were gone when I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. How is the bread I purchased doing lost? How about yogurt lost? Not even my leftovers from the previous evening remained. Have you consumed my food? I asked, going back into the living room. Riel didn't even raise his head. In between ice cream licks, Mom responded, I could. The cost was not borne by her. I lost my temper. Riley eventually rolled her eyes and turned to face me. Riley, calm down. It's only food. It's my food, I said, raising my voice. Go purchase your own cheese if you want groceries. Ariel put her dish down on the coffee table and said, You don't have to be such a drama queen. You're behaving as though I took your automobile. I was at a loss for words. Brielle took her phone and started messaging someone while I stood there furious, utterly ignoring me once more. Although I knew it wouldn't change anything, I wanted to scream at her for being conceited and self-centered. Because her parents let it. Brielle had been able to get away with this type of behavior her entire life, and now they were trying to implicate me. I was making coffee in the kitchen the following morning when Mom cornered me. She said sharply, "You must apologize to your sister." For what purpose? I asked honestly, puzzled. For causing her to feel uncomfortable. Mom crossed her arms and said, "She is going through a lot right now, and you being unpleasant is the last thing she needs." "Are you serious?" I turned to her and inquired. She pretended it wasn't a huge problem while eating all of my meals. How can I blame that mom's side as though I were the one being irrational? "Riley, it's just food. More may always be purchased." "The point isn't that," I answered while trying to maintain a steady tone. "The main thing is that you're allowing her to get away with disrespecting people's limits." "Limits?" Mom questioned, almost laughing. "Now, too, this is her home. You must develop your sharing skills." I knew then that I couldn't make sense of her. Mom didn't want to hear my version of events. She only wanted me to follow the rules and act in the family's best interests. Things worsened during the course of the next week. My parents started to imply that they would raise my rent if I didn't help. Brielle kept bringing more things into the house, packing boxes and furniture into the basement. Because the bathroom below wasn't functioning properly, she even began using mine. I made an effort to avoid them, but it seems like they were all trying to draw me into their mess. Dad was in the living room one evening when I got home, clutching what looked like a financial spreadsheet. "We need to talk," he added, gesturing for me to take a seat. After some hesitation, I sat on the couch's edge and prepared myself for what was about to happen. As Brielle moved in, Dad tapped the page with his pen and said, "We've been looking at the numbers. Costs are increasing. We believe that you should give more." "I already have rent from you," I answered. "How much more are you looking for?" Dad gave a shrug. "That's still a mystery to us. This appears to be the greatest option, though, if you're unwilling to assist with the infant." I was shocked by what I heard. They were actually trying to get me to babysit by using my rent as leverage. "This is absurd," I stood up and yelled. "For what I receive here, I already pay more than enough. Just let me know if you want me to go." "You're not being asked to leave," Dad answered quickly. "All we ask is that you do your share." "My part," I said again. "You mean the bit about Brill?" Dad parted his lips to respond, but I stopped him in his tracks. I slammed the door behind me as I left the room and went straight to my bedroom. I knew then that I couldn't continue in this manner. I couldn't continue to live in a household where my parents treated me like cheap labor and disregarded my limits. I had no idea when or how. However, I was convinced of one thing. I had to go. Every time Brielle waltzed around the house as like she owned it, that notion became louder in my mind. When my parents attempted to get me to help, it was completely different to desire to go and really do it. The idea of uprooting my life so quickly was daunting, and I didn't have enough saved to comfortably purchase my own home. But I knew there was no way I could remain. It would never stop if I allowed them to pressure me into taking on the role of Brill's backup parent right away. They simply kept adding things to me until I was trapped. I didn't want to be resentful and sad when I woke up in that house 5 years later. I got down with my computer and made myself a cup of coffee the following morning. To keep track of my expenses, which included rent, groceries, gas, and student loans, I started a spreadsheet. Although I wasn't particularly good at saving money, I did manage to put away a certain amount each month. After adding everything up, I saw that if I could find a place that was affordable and cut up on frills for a while, I could manage to relocate. It couldn't have come at a better time. Harper, one of my coworkers, said a few weeks ago that she was looking for a roommate. It feels like a lifeline now, but I hadn't paid any attention to it before. I texted her. "Hello, is it still possible to have a roommate?" She answered right away. "Yes, I'm still searching. What piques your interest?" "Yes, perhaps. After work, is it possible for us to speak?" Harper's response was short and straightforward. "Naturally." I arrived at school late that afternoon and waited until the hallways were empty before going into Harper's classroom. She was seated at her workstation, grading assignments. "What is going on?" She looked up from her pile of papers and asked. Uncertain of how much to reveal, I hesitated for a moment. Finally, I answered, I'm considering leaving my parents' house. They're complicating everything. Harper gave me a nod as though she understood without my explanation. The deal is still available, she clarified. Although it's not very large, it's tidy, and we would divide everything equally. The monthly rent is $800. Included are utilities. That was manageable, even if it was a little higher than I had intended. When is the best time for someone to move in yesterday, I asked you. But seriously, any time if you're in the room's yours, she said. I told her that I would inform her by the end of the week, but I had already made up my mind. This was how I got out. After that, I needed to figure out how to get out without making any more noise. I knew my parents would try to thwart my plan if they found out too soon. To stop me from saving anything, they would accuse me, argue with me, and potentially even increase my rent right away. So I said nothing. I started packing slowly, concentrating on clothing, personal belongings, necessities, and whatever I couldn't afford to replace. In case someone was interested, I kept everything in my car's trunk covered with a blanket. I started recording everything at the same moment, just in case. I took pictures of my equipment, furnishings, and room. Anything that could someday become controversial. I was aware from past experience that Brielle had a tendency to lose track of who owned what, and I didn't want to be the one to lose my possessions when she left one night when everyone was asleep. I duly delivered my 30-day notice by printing out a letter. After doing some research online, I found that even if I wasn't technically a renter, it was still a good idea to get everything in writing. They accusing me of abruptly departing was the last thing I wanted. That night, I didn't get much sleep because I kept looking at the clock and listening for any noises that may mean someone was awake. I finally slid the envelope beneath my parents' bedroom door around 6 in the morning. The response was prompt. That day, Mom and Dad were waiting for me in the living room when I got home from work. What is this? Dad asked, displaying the letter as though it were an insult. This is my notice, I stated firmly. This is what you're actually doing? Mom asked, her voice shaky already. Yes, I said firmly. I'll be leaving at the end of the month after finding a place. You can't simply walk away, Mom clarified. How about Brielle? How is the infant doing? I inhaled deeply and made an effort to stay composed. I'm not in charge of Brielle or the baby. I've tried my hardest to help out here, but I can't continue to live this way. What's the matter with you? Dad's voice rose as he asked. Before you weren't as obstinate. We've helped you get off the ground and allowed you to reside here among other things. And you pay us back like this? I resisted the need to yell and tightened my hands. Rent is something I pay. I clenched my teeth in response. I purchase my own food. Since the day I graduated, I have taken responsibility for my own actions. I am no longer a child. Furthermore, I'm not your fallback option for Brielle. Not surprisingly, Mom started weeping. When things didn't go her way, she would always weep. How are you able to harm us? She sobbed in front of your sister. I remained silent. I saw that there was no need. They refused to listen, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Those were some of the most embarrassing days of my life. Other than the occasional guilt trip, my parents didn't talk to me very much. Brielle proceeded to occupy the house as though it were already hers, acting as though nothing had happened. One evening, I came home to see that she had moved more of her possessions into the basement, pushing clothing into the closet and placing boxes on top of the sofa. She appeared to be occupying every square inch of space that was open to her. As I went in, she added, I hope you don't mind. I didn't answer. I ignored the knot of anger growing in my chest and just went upstairs and closed the door to my room. I increased my preparations in the last few days before my move. I arranged for Harper to pick up the keys, packed the remainder of my possessions, and double-checked my budget. Even though everything was falling into place, I couldn't shake the nagging fear. The morning I formally moved out was the hardest. I had made plans for Harper to drop over with her car, and we would pick up the rest of my stuff before heading over to her apartment. I believed that I had carefully arranged everything so that Mom and Dad would be too busy with their morning tasks to notice me and Brielle would still be asleep. Nothing in my family ever goes as smoothly, of course. I heard my father's shoes shuffle down the hallway as I was halfway through packing boxes to go to my car. At the top of the steps, he came out. "What are you doing?" He made a demand. I continued to move. "I'm leaving today like I mentioned." I mumbled as I picked up another box and left. He yelled after me outside, "You can't just sneak out like this." "Riley, we're a family. Are you leaving your family behind?" I turned to him and put the gift in my car's trunk. "I'm not going to desert anyone," I answered coolly. "I'm making the decision to live my own life. There is a distinction." Dad seemed to want to argue, but Mom came to the doorway before he could say anything. She had her arms folded and tears streaming down her face. "This is what you're actually doing?" Her voice cracked as she asked. "Yes," I said, forcefully maintaining my position. "How about Brielle?" she cried as she asked. "How is the infant doing?" Feeling the weight of the discourse, I let out a sigh. "Come down on me. I've already told you, Mom, that I don't care about Brielle or the baby. I can't keep giving up my life to correct the faults that triggered her. You have no right to discuss your sister in such a way." She raised her voice and demanded, "She's trying her hardest." As she said, I said, "Because it appears to me that she is simply waiting for everyone else to finish the task for her." Disorganized but attentive, Brielle emerged from the basement. As the situation unfolded in the driveway, she grinned. "Mom, don't worry." Her tone was cynical as she added, "We don't need Riley anyhow, even if she wants to write a selfish letter." I clenched my hands, fighting the want to retaliate. Rather, I turned to face Harper, who had just pulled up in her car. I said, ignoring the noise behind me, "Let's get this done." Harper gave me a pitying glance and then began helping me load the remainder of my stuff into the vehicles. My parents were still fighting in the background, utilizing every possible guilt trip they could come up with. "Now who will assist us?" Dad shouted. "How could you be so callous?" Mom broke down. While everything was going on, Brielle leaned against the door frame and watched everything as though it were a live performance for her amusement. I felt as though I had completed a marathon by the time we had loaded everything. I stood in the driveway and gave the house I had spent so many years in one final glance. I was relieved by it, even though it should have been a bittersweet occasion. I turned on the car and drove off. Harper is right behind. As soon as I pulled into Harper's apartment building, I felt at ease. Although it was unpretentious, it was tidy, serene, and above all dramatic. After Harper helped me move everything inside, I unpacked and got settled in my new room. Within an hour. After that, we discussed work while sitting on the couch. It seemed typical, like a glimpse of the life I had been missing while ensnared in the chaos of my family. However, the peace lasted for around 2 hours. My phone began to vibrate constantly, with voicemails, texts, and calls. My parents, aunts, and cousins were involved. Apparently, my mother had already told everyone that I had left the family, and everyone had an opinion. "How could you harm your sister like Way Riley?" My Aunt Denise left me a voicemail. "She is fragile and pregnant. You care about your family, don't you? You're not even close to being selfish." A cousin also texted to say that Brill's social media posts were the worst part. With comments like, "Some people would rather run away than help their own family," she posted pictures of her growing baby bump going into full victim mode. "At least my child will understand what true love is." I blocked her right away. Even though it was annoying, I resisted the want to return. I reminded myself that I had left for precisely this reason, to escape the drama and manipulation that accompanied being a member of my family. Things at work became more stranger the next week. During my lunch break, my mother came to school sobbing and asking to talk to me. She was in full-blown tantrum mode, complaining that Brielle was disintegrating without me and that I had destroyed the family. It was embarrassing that my principal had to step in and ask her to leave. I avoided making eye contact with everyone for the remainder of the day, since I knew they were probably curious about the family drama I was involved in, but it really worked to my advantage. Life isn't that easy, but I believed I was over the home and all the turmoil it had brought. After about 2 weeks, I discovered that I had forgotten several important documents, such as my teaching certification tax returns and other documents pertaining to my job. I was so focused on leaving the house that I neglected to check the little drawer where I generally kept these kinds of things. After my mother arrived to my school, I told a few of my coworkers about all that had been going on. Without hesitation, they stepped up to give their support. "Tell us when you're prepared to pick up the remaining items." Harper gave me her spare vehicle keys and continued, "We'll get there quickly." In order to get the rest of my stuff back, Harper and Zoe, a coworker, went to my parents' house a few days later. I miscalculated how low they were willing to go, but I believed I was ready for whatever garbage they would do. My room had changed completely by the time we got there. In a territorial conquest, Brielle had relocated more of her possessions to merge them with mine. I had clothes shoved inside my dresser that weren't mine. My desk was piled high with random baby items, and my nightstand was entirely cleared out and filled with her possessions. "What's happening?" "More than everybody else," I whispered to myself. With a cup of coffee in her hand and an air of indifference, Brielle entered the threshold. "Oh, hey," she said nonchalantly, as like nothing had occurred. "My belongings must have gotten muddled up. Right now, it's difficult to determine what is mine and what is yours." I looked at her, not understanding the audacity of what she had spoken. "Do you mean the items that have been in my room for years?" She drank her coffee and shrugged. "You've already gone, however. What does it matter then?" She clearly intended to make things more challenging for me by doing this. She was unaware, however, that I had anticipated this very situation. I pulled out my phone and opened the album with pictures of my room before she moved there. I have pictures of everything already. I gave her an explanation while displaying the screen and compiling a list of everything I owned, including the serial numbers of my devices. Brill's face contorted in annoyance, but before she could respond, her parents showed up. "What's happening?" Dad asked. "How come you're in here?" His voice was angry as he urged. "I came to retrieve some forgotten items." Trying not to lose my cool, I answered, "But Brielle is saying she can't tell what's mine and what's hers. Everything I possess has paperwork." Dad's face grew stern. "I'll contact the cops if you steal anything that isn't yours." I gave a short, non-humorous chuckle. "Go ahead," I said. "We can also discuss with them whether it is lawful for you to enter my room without permission and to mess with my possessions." He became silent at that. I was assisted in sorting through the mess by Harper and Zoe. When I picked up my laptop, Brielle tried to argue, claiming it was hers, but I only needed to show her the purchase paperwork and a picture of the serial number. She grew more irate the more she realized her scheme would fail. She threw her fists in the air and cried out, "This is so unfair! Are you robbing a pregnant woman?" I looked over at her. "I'm tired. You are the only one attempting to take anything here," I said strongly. "Similar to how you've been attempting to take away my independence and time by asking me to serve as your unpaid nanny. No more." I got into Harper's vehicle and didn't turn around. 6 months have passed since then. The baby was born to Brielle, and everything is collapsing just as I anticipated. My parents are currently unable to work full-time jobs and provide the child care they tried to force upon me. The few family members who still talk to me say they're exhausted and overburdened. Brielle hasn't even looked for a job. Given that she spends most of her time scrolling through her phone and neglecting her responsibilities, her claim that she is too stressed to work is probably true. With a wailing baby and an unfinished basement renovation that is eating up their retirement funds, she is still living at my parents' house. They've reportedly tried to get in touch with me several times since I left. First, I got a nasty text message accusing me of being unappreciative. They went on guilt trips about how much the baby needed me when that didn't work. Sending pictures of my niece along with comments like, "Don't you want to meet your only niece?" is the newest tactic. And she requires the presence of her aunt. I've put up email filters and banned them all on social media to stop them from communicating with me. I've received updates from a few family members who are aware of my predicament, but I've made it plain that I have no interest in repairing relationships unless my parents and Brielle own their wrongdoing and make sincere changes. Ironically, I probably would have complied if they had just asked for occasional babysitting help like regular folks and respected my boundaries. I love kids and would have been happy to help them occasionally, but their attempt to compel me to attend daycare full-time while disregarding my freedom and privacy crushed any chance of that ever occurring. That's my story, absolutely. All of this taught me that sometimes stopping your family's destructive behavior is the best thing you can do for them. Story 3. Hello, this is Odilon Maren. After learning that my sister and my fiancé were having dinner together, I made reservations at the table directly next to theirs. My future, my hopes, and my clothing were all taken by my own blood, acting as though it was only chemistry. They silently destroyed me, stole from me for months, and grinned as I sat in the dark. Will you remain silent while I take back all the pieces that have been stolen? Tell us before we go in. You are listening to this at what time? Where are you two? Please leave a comment below. We would be delighted to hear from you. Everything seemed to calm down for its own sake on one of those calm evenings. As if nothing could possibly harm us, Cassian was singing to himself while taking a shower. On a night that should have finished with tea and bed, I was sprawled out on the couch in our Austin living room going over sample color palettes for a client presentation. Then his phone came on. A simple ping. I had heard the innocuous chime 1,000 times. I didn't intend to glance. I swear I didn't. But the screen was facing me. And curiosity, know something deeper, made me glance. Aria Friday private booth. She'll love it. I blinked. The message, preview, was from my sister, Valera. My stomach clenched. My first thought was that must be a mistake, but it wasn't. The sender ID was clear and the tone too familiar. Private booth at Aria. That wasn't a place you went with coworkers or for casual dinners. It was where Cassian took me on our first anniversary. I sat frozen for a bit. Then my hand moved on its own, reaching for his phone like it belonged to me. I hesitated. I wasn't someone who snooped. But something about that message. It wasn't curiosity. It was instinct. The passcode. Still our anniversary. I wanted to laugh. The screen unlocked and I entered into a strange realm. Their thread wasn't simply messages. It was a gradual unfolding treachery. They had dinner reservations within jokes, references to incidents that had happened while I believed Cassian was working late or out of town for a conference. And then the photo, Valera wearing the outfit. My dress. The one I had carefully picked for our engagement shoot. The one I let her borrow last month since she had a charity event and nothing suitable to wear the same outfit she'd scoffed at before mocking. It's cute. Kind of modest for me, though. There she stood, standing in that same outfit, one shoulder slightly off a hand on her hip like she owned it. Or maybe like she just claimed something more than fabric. I looked at the image for what felt like hours. I wasn't simply looking at infidelity. I was looking at erasure. My sister had taken something sacred and made it hers. My fiancé, my outfit, my place. I didn't weep. I didn't hurl his phone across the room. I didn't shout. I placed the phone precisely where I found it. Then I walked calm and steady to the kitchen, poured a glass of water with hands that should have been shaking. They weren't. It's strange how treachery doesn't hit like lightning. It pours in like cold. I grabbed my own phone and texted Elias as soon as the water hit my lips. Are you awake? In less than a minute, he responded. Always for you, Elias, my closest companion, my former partner, the only one who has ever witnessed the full extent of Valoria's harm and described it as such. I have to reserve a table for supper. When he picked up, I said. I spoke steadily. Friday night, clinical aria. After a pause, they were next to them. Indeed, surprisingly, the matron was accommodating. I didn't have to lie or beg. I only mentioned that I needed a private meal for work-related reasons, maybe close to another gathering. He pledged to keep it private. After finishing that, I just stood still in the middle of the kitchen. The faint sound of the upstairs shower and the soft hum of the refrigerator. All of this left me feeling as though nothing was possible. However it was. I strolled back to the hallway after turning off the kitchen light. Cassian had yet to get out of the shower. Rather than retiring to bed, I sneaked into my home office, sat at the antique wooden desk that belonged to my father, opened the navy leather journal that I hadn't looked at since the beginning of the year, and scribbled one phrase in strong black ink on a new page. After that, it was emphasized 3 times. Let's explore what it's like to sit next to someone who betrays you and not recoil. My hands trembled this time as I closed the diary. Only a bit. Let's explore what it's like to sit next to someone who betrays you and not recoil. I had been thinking about that statement for the last 3 days. I murmured it on the way to work and repeated it while brushing my teeth. I repeatedly wrote that in my diary almost as a mantra that I needed to believe but didn't yet. Friday arrived quickly. Too quick. I arrived at Aria by 6:30. I had never seen the room so quiet and dimly lighted, as if it sensed a serious situation was about to start. The matron gave me the type of look you save for regulars who bring drama and leave a good tip. As asked, he gave a covert nod and pointed to the corner. Miss Marin, table 12. Your visitor has shown up. Visitor. Elias was sitting when I turned around. White shirt, navy blazer, no tie. As calm as ever. Did you really think I would leave you to deal with this alone? He remarked, smiling softly as he stood up. He extended his hand. I accepted it. His hold was solid, warm, and just long enough to give the impression that we were something more to anyone who happened to be looking, which they would be shortly. As if we were going on a first date, he pulled out my chair. I sat quietly as I pressed my dress's fabric smooth. A black sheath that fit. Strong, yet not ostentatious. Velour wouldn't be caught dead in that type of stuff. I had my wine ready. Crisp, dry white. I took a leisurely drink, allowing the cold taste to calm me down. Elias leaned closer. Are you certain you want to attend this? Since she wore my dress, I've been certain, I answered. Cassian entered at 7:12. Trying not to be too apparent, he looked around the room as if he was expecting someone he knew. Hairdo, the same way I used to touch it with my fingertips. When he was anxious, he had the same little hunch in his shoulders. From 10 feet away, I observed everything. Valera came next, and she entered as she usually did. Confident, her hair is brushed up, and she smiles as if she has never heard a soul before. My naked stilettos were on her. I had lent her the Louboutins for a dinner with a client. It was 6 months ago. They were never given back. She claimed to have laughed at something Cassian said, just like so many other parts of me that she had blatantly taken. Like a pair who had practiced this moment together, they slid into the booth on the same side. God, Elias mumbled to himself. They appear practiced. I didn't respond. I had been too preoccupied to learn every nuance of their body language. His hand hovered close to her thigh as hers fell toward him. I stood up after swirling my wine. I didn't let Elias stop me. I pretended to go to the bathroom and took the detour past the booth. I turned to face them as I came back. Valera was the first to notice me. She stopped. In real time, her smile fell apart. Then Cassian turned. In fact, his mouth fell open. Calm as ever, I stopped next to their stand. I didn't even falter in my voice. Valera, I said with ease. I think you recall Elias. Elias nodded courteously as he stood behind me like a quiet rock. He didn't grin, not necessary. Valor's lips parted, then closed. Cash seems to want to sink into the ground. How about you? I looked over at him. I have faith in God. Everything is visible to me. Odilon blinked at the cash. What is this? Tell me, please. I tilted my head in agreement. Dinner is the only reason I'm here. Similar to you. They remained still, remained silent. Valera was the first to glance down as if the tiled floor would save her. The maitre d', who had been observing from a courteous distance, turned to face me. Are these two tables able to be pushed together? I inquired. I have a smooth voice. Let's have a discussion. Without a single query, the maitress nodded quietly and pushed the tables together. As our corners blended together, there was just the subtle shuffle of linen and the clink of cutlery. Cash Elias settled in next to me once again, and she sat rigidly across the floor from him, her arms clasped firmly in her lap. Nobody said anything for a long time. It wasn't simply silence at the table. It was oppressive. Cassian made the initial attempt. He did, of course. It isn't what you believe. His voice trembled as he started. I promise, Odilon, I was going to speak with you. It was never our intention. Don't, I gently interrupted. Please don't change the time frame just to make me feel better. Valera placed one leg over the other and exhaled slowly. This has nothing to do with treachery, she remarked. We couldn't overlook the link here. It simply occurred. A link. I cocked my head. Do you call that forwarding him I booked a restaurant for our anniversary, right? Cassian moved about in his chair. Valorish jerked her jaw. Elias didn't say anything, but the slight touch of his thumb on my knuckles under the table was enough to anchor me. You did not experience love, I remarked, giving them each a direct look. You practiced this falsehood without me. Valeria gave a snort. Odilon, hurry up. You never really had him. You as well? Did you play house? Yes. However, you were never far from the door. I could have fallen for the trick, but I chose not to. Rather, I relaxed as though we were having a conversation over breakfast on Sunday. Additionally, you've always confused winning with stealing. That pattern keeps coming back, which is funny. Her smile broke. You've always exaggerated things, even throughout our adolescence. Do you recall the art competition you pretended that it was a war crime to lose that picture place? I gasped. I didn't lose, therefore I remembered. I was the regional winner. For precisely 1 week, my picture had been displayed on the family mantle. Dad then changed it to an image of Valoris as the homecoming queen. It was more typical of the family, he remarked. I wrote in my journal that week when I was 16. I'm the backdrop, I suppose. The headline is about her, Valor. Laura was unaware that I observed that switch or that I sobbed about it for 2 hours in the garage while turning up the radio so no one could hear me. I didn't answer. Then no. We're done here, I told the maitre d' after pushing back my chair. Thank you. He gave a nod. Elias got up. No one at the table argued. It was a peaceful journey back to my place. The sort of silence that makes your bones vibrate like static. After leading me to my door, Elias departed with a silent pause and a prolonged glance. If you need me, text me. I was inside. Take off your shoes. Still wearing the evening attire, unable to fall asleep. With my phone in hand, I sat down on the couch and began to browse. Valera had shared a brand new picture of herself on her lower back holding cash at a vineyard. Valera's attire was almost exactly the same as the one I had in mind for my own photo session, even the statement beneath the primary image in the captions. When I was organizing our engagement shoot last month, I sent Cash in my quotation by email. For love to last forever, it doesn't have to be loud. I gazed at the television, breathless, cold perspiration trickling down my spine and my pulse racing like I had just raced a mile. He wasn't just taken. They claimed ownership of my tale, my life's framework, my photographs, my thoughts, and my style. It buzzed on my phone. Elias is still conscious. I returned the type. He wasn't just taken. My story was taken. After setting down the phone, I walked to my bookshelves and took out the old journal. The one I hadn't opened in more than 10 years was leather-bound and barely held together. I turned the pages over. Doodles for a birthday, laments about an old crush. I acted as though I enjoyed family vacations. Then I discovered it. The paper had yellowed 15 years ago, but the writing was still clear. Should I ever vanish from my own existence? I'm hoping someone takes attention. I spoke the words and ran my fingertips over it. Right now, I'm noticing. You can't return to faking once you start to notice. I did not open my laptop the next morning. Didn't look at my emails. I didn't even give the plants their customary feeding. I sat chilly with my coffee, gazing at nothing, until a name I hadn't seen in months appeared on my phone. Whitmore May. Law school is when we first met. When life pushed in several directions, it shifted. I understood that she and Laura had recently re-established their friendship. Wine parties, Pilates, and book groups every week. Up until now, I hadn't given it much thought. May sent an SMS. Hey, I understand how awkward this is. Can we have a conversation? Only us. She decided on an East 6 bistro, local and quiet. The sort of business that played acoustic versions of 90s songs and served espresso in actual porcelain mugs. She was there as soon as I entered. She clasped her mug with both hands as if it would speed up her speech. She said, "Thanks for coming." I sat onto the seat across from her and nodded. May, what's happening on... After a moment of hesitation, she took out her phone. I assumed you were aware. You didn't deserve this, but I didn't want to interfere. She opened a text message thread. The name of Valoris is bolded at the top. Her communications. Cruel. Valeria. She clings to him like a baby. Cassian is airless. You should see how happy he gets when he's around me, Valera. She seems to have kept him in a cage. As May gave me the phone, her eyes were filled with shame. For over a year, they have been dating. I didn't recoil. I made no further requests. With a stiff jaw, I just returned the phone and muttered, "Thank you for being honest." For most individuals, that's more than I've received. To prove to myself that I could stand there and not crumble, I drove to my mother's house later that day. The scent of nostalgia and lemon cleaning permeated the house. A bit too hollow, a bit too clean. To Odilon's amazement, she opened the door. Is everything all right? All I wanted to do was chat. I spoke about Cassian and Valera while maintaining an equal tone. With a frown, she ushered me into the kitchen. The tea was brewing already. After a moment, she replied, I know it's not easy. However, Cassian always appeared more lively in Valera's presence. Perhaps it's not treachery. Perhaps it's only chemistry. I blinked. Chemistry? As if to test the term, I repeated. That concludes the bar. Before she could answer. Footsteps descended the steps, Valera holding a book wearing one of my old college sweaters. Oh, she remarked nonchalantly. I had no idea you were stopping by. I gazed at the book's cover, which I had stored beneath my bed for many years. Dad gave it to me before he became ill. She heard it. Do you reside here? I inquired. Without even blinking, she said, just until the wedding. It's okay, Mom said. I turned to face our mom. She didn't dispute it. I got up slowly. I'll let you two resume your bonding activities. However, I turned at the front hallway. Valera was following me, presumably to boast. I paused and looked at her. You might have tricked them, I said. Even if you're building on ashes, you can think that what you're doing is love. She twisted her lip. You're simply resentful. Give it up. He was never pleased with you. It was there. The gut punch. I didn't falter, though. Savor him. With a voice like ice, I said. However, I'll make sure that everyone knows who set the fire if you attempt to remove me once again. She slammed the door behind me and rolled her eyes. And on the table in the hall, a framed picture that I had taken on our family vacation to Sedona years prior served as the final little insult. My shot. Someone has cut out my watermark. A gold plaque read underneath it. Valera took it. I pulled out my phone and took the photo. She uses her phone to take a photo of it. I couldn't even recall leaving the home. I was in my car the next thing I knew. The keys are still on my lap, but the engine is going. I couldn't get the framed picture out of my head. I altered one after taking one. I treasured it and now used it for the same reason as everything else they took. It was 3 days later. I didn't actually work. I went through the motions, speaking steadily and responding briefly. However, something was shifting, settling, and moving inside. Then the message arrived. Would you be able to visit on Saturday for a peaceful conversation, Mom? Calmly, the word revealed who she was. There was a plan. The gravel crunched as usual when I drove up the well-known driveway on Saturday afternoon. My chest began to hurt subtly. How many holidays are there, late-night tears and birthdays? Had I been held in this house, I wasn't sure what was inside it now. Mom was already set up on the edge of the sofa, acting as a mediator when I spotted them. Dad's hands were folded across from hers. Cassian sat rigidly close to the velour and armrest. Excellent posture. She crossed her legs and grinned as if she had always been there. I appreciate you coming. As like it were a bargain, Mom remarked. I sat down in the single available seat and waited. All we want is to proceed in peace, she added. It makes no sense to keep this tension going. 2 weeks remain till the engagement celebration. Can we all agree to avoid making any scenes? Scenes made my jaw stiffen. Dad, who hardly talked unless it was discussing the weather or auto maintenance, glanced up and said, Do you mean telling the truth? Digging up more than has already been done is pointless. Despite clearing his throat, Cassian remained silent. Then, dazzling as ever, Valera added her voice. All we want to do is rejoice. Make a new beginning. The deposits have been settled. The honeymoon is set in stone. At last, everything has been resolved. As if the universe had perfectly wrapped about her, her voice dripped with ease. Something made sense. The money down payment, the honeymoon. She cried when she phoned me 2 years ago. It's an OD emergency. I can't tell my mother that I need a medical operation. You can count on me to repay you. I sent $18,000 to her. No documentation. Simply have faith. Bill was never seen by me. Never seen any scars. Just a growing Pinterest board with the words, Forever with him, and a new apartment. I now understood that no hospital received the funds. It got her the venue in the vineyard. The suite for the honeymoon. My quiet. I said nothing at all. I didn't have to. Before my tongue could form it, my entire body became frigid, like if my flesh already knew. Reaching inside her purse, Valera produced a hefty embossed white envelope. Right here. Sweetly, she said. Your request. I still want you to be there. As if nothing were amiss, I accepted it and gazed at the gold letters and our family's name printed on the front. I then returned it. I'm not going to the theft celebration. Mom gasped. Odilon, don't do this. She's your sister. I gave her a glance. Observe her closely, and I was your first daughter. Before anyone could stop me, I got up and left. Don't shout. No final remarks. Outside, it's just the pressure of 1,000 unspoken things between my shoulder blades. The sky was now cloudy. I arrived to my car, leaned against the door, and opened my lungs to breathe. I then opened my phone and sent Elias the one message I had been thinking about for days. The time has come. Can we discuss on Monday lawful? I was sitting in the foyer with a folder by the time Elias opened his office door on Monday morning. It had been days since I'd ventured inside. Neither good morning nor did he say either. You appear worn out. He only said, come in, nodded and moved aside. The room had a subtle scent of aged coffee and leather. It brought back memories of our time spent studying for the bar test together, which was oddly comforting. Before titles and treachery. Silently, I placed the folder on his desk. You should see this. They may have used my name. He did not recoil. I just started reading after opening the folder. It contained printouts of Cassian's previous business plan, screenshots of the wire transfer to Valera, and $18,000 marked only as personal. I was once requested to evaluate by him. He informed me he was only brainstorming at the time. It had been a blueprint I now recognized. Elias was silent for a few minutes. He took a printed set of LLC paperwork out of a tiny, lockable drawer. Is this a Valores startup? I gave a nod. Look at line 14, he added, urging the form in my direction. The first angel investor used a cash and shell management company to register as O&M. Is that you? You were transferred. They used his name to hide it. My throat tightened each breath. Upon closer inspection, I noticed a signature I had previously used on a leasing agreement years prior. It had been lifted. Whispering, I reused it. They started her business with me, and when she no longer needed me, they eliminated me. Elias reclined on his seat. You may file a lawsuit. You would prevail. However, they will portray you as resentful if you do it now. Feeling envious. With money, you'll appear like a betrayed ex. You can catch them off guard if you wait. Once more, he was correct. The following hour was devoted to formulating a plan. Just friction thus far, no lawsuits. To identify any upcoming investments associated with that company name, we generated documentation. He then assisted me in submitting an official notification of gift. Not enough to make headlines just yet, but enough to show up in public records. I left in the middle of the afternoon, carrying clarity in one arm and a folder in the other. Just before sunset that night, I made a visit to Valores Boutique. The windows shone brightly. Her name did too. The glass was inscribed with gold letters that seemed to have belonged to her forever. I entered with a scarf that she had loaned me during my time in college. Her assistant's eyes widened as she looked up. Hey, hello. Have you viewed the email? Which email? Our Stripe accounts were placed on hold by the system. The name of an investor has a legal flag attached to it. Yours. The Valera appeared from the rear before I could answer. As soon as she spotted me, her smile vanished. She seems to have witnessed something that she was unaware could bleed. I gave the scarf to her. I thought you would want this returned. She parted her lips, but nothing came out. I moved in close enough for her to be the only one who could hear me. It's funny how individuals may be erased. Their names occasionally recur in bold. After that, I departed. No drama, no scene. Only the quiet of a lady who at last recognized her value. I unlocked my laptop, drank a glass of water, and kicked off my shoes when I got home. The anonymous message then appeared. No profile, no name. A simple direct message. Just letting you know. First, they intend to go public. Discredit you before to your legalization. Before I moved, the direct message remained open on my screen for a full minute. No profile photo, no name. It was only a line that struck dry leaves like a match. First, they intend to go public. Discredit you before to your legalization. I didn't answer. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. I just shut down the laptop, got up, and went to my closet. I went with a simple outfit. It was planned. Clean neckline, deep navy sculpted shoulders. I had my hair up. Apply makeup, delicate. Tonight, there would be no interruptions. Just the facts. Austin traffic was humming outside the city on Friday night, acting as though it was unaware of the storm that was building in one of the city's fancy hotel ballrooms. Despite being uninvited, I arrived early with confidence. I was not stopped at the door. It's funny how people think you belong when you appear to fit in on the inside. Ambition, perfume, and carefully manicured grins filled the air. People say authenticity and mean angle at this type of networking event. I let my eyes to adjust before taking a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray. There she was, Valera in the warm spotlight on stage. She spoke in a clear, practiced voice. So, I started from the beginning, no shortcuts. Just hard work, vision, and the right individuals who had faith in me. Cheers. There's a dramatic pause. As a montage, including pictures from her store and her early years, flashed behind her, she put her palm to her breast. Lastly, a story of perseverance from self-made creator Valera Marron. I glided like fog through the crowd. I noticed bits and pieces behind the courteous conversation. After the split, Cassian said his ex went into a downward spiral. It seems that she is now causing them problems. What a shame. Really. Not everyone is able to move on. Just off stage, Cassian was seen leaning in toward a public relations representative with a worried face that was ideal for evoking compassion. "She is brittle," he spoke in a breathy, low voice. "She is making stuff up, but we didn't want to say anything earlier. All we've ever done is wish her peace." I might have let out a scream. I could have snatched up a microphone and ripped their falsehoods apart, but I chose not to. Instead, when the microphone concluded Valera's section, I moved stealthily near the front. Finally, before we wrap up, a particular thanks to Odell and Marin, among others who have contributed to the advancement of women in leadership. I gave a few courteous claps and a few perplexed looks. With a little smile, I accepted the microphone and raised my phone. "I think stories are important," I remarked. "The ones where someone is written out and then writes back in particular." I give the screen a tap. They heard Cassian's voice over the ballroom speakers. "Previously, we were reluctant to speak, but she is unstable. We didn't talk because we were in love." Whispers. The chairs moved. Glasses stopped in mid-stride. I then tapped once more. Marin and Company's founding paper. "File, January 3rd, 2022, I said. Odell Marine was the first investor. I displayed the original marketing presentation and the notarized printout for everyone to see. I went on all based on a vision they now claim as their own. Halfway down the stairs toward the microphone, Laura had frozen. I looked over at her. "I'm not here to make you seem bad. Voice even," I said. "I'm here to make things right." After that, I gave the microphone to the person behind me, got off the platform, and left. I didn't turn around as the room erupted in murmurs, gasps, and camera flashes. I let the quiet swallow go by, closing the door behind them without smashing it or even pressing it shut. I stood there for a while with one hand still on the doorknob. Never before had my place felt so tidy and devoid of pretension. I let out a breath and looked at my phone. The gala video clip. It had blown up. It was everywhere by daybreak. The entire incident had been captured on camera. The packed Valores faced my speech, even after I left with nothing except my name taking back its place. Hashtags like Real Founder, Silent No More, and my own favorite were all over Twitter. The house they attempted to remove the silent sister from was actually built by her. Not even my inbox was secure. Journalists, former co-workers, and distant family members. It was an email from a stranger. "Flora was never my favorite. I appreciate you reminding everyone that being loud does not equate to being right." And then Elias called. Stripe highlighted Valores LLC and the large fund as a result of the audit. They're leaving till the ownership situation is resolved. Not in horror, but in relief. I sat down softly on the edge of my couch. Breathing room, but not yet triumph. Then the message arrived. A voice tape that was forwarded surprised me. Just the topic line, no name. "This is something you ought to hear." I hit the play button. Cashin's voice was distinct and informal. "She refuses to defend herself. Odilon, she lacks it in herself. We'll just make the transition gradually. It will belong to us by the time she realizes." After a break, Valores burst out laughing. Fairness was always her goal. Her shortcoming is that. The file was cut out. I had trembling hands, but from insight, not from anguish. The address that was forwarded, Boutique Valores. I looked over the information. The file was located in the folder of her assistant. After 3 hours, a silent email arrived. "We had to remove you from everything because of her. I apologize for not being able to continue." I didn't reply in writing. For a long time, I just gazed out the window, seeing how the shadows move across my structure, while some betrayals are liberating others pierce deeply. They arrived that night. Cassian was the first to knock. Behind him stood Valera. Her face was no longer sharp or covered with cosmetics, simply panic. They weren't invited in. I gave them a chance to talk. "We can reverse this, Odilon. We will publicly correct the situation if you decide to drop the lawsuit. Simply inform them that there was a misunderstanding. He gave me the same expectant expression that people give ATM displays. Valor's voice broke. I had no intention of ruining you. I had no idea it would get this far. Slowly, I nodded. I wasn't ruined by you. I took a moment to process the stillness. I was set free by you. For that, they had no words. As they walked away, Valeria turned. Now I have no idea who you are. This time my smile was sincere. Perhaps that is the issue. You didn't. Link to the following chapter. Perhaps that is the issue. You didn't. Perhaps that is the issue. You didn't. By the time I shut the door, Valora's voice had hardly diminished. The weight of everything unsaid hung in the air in my flat. I didn't need it lighter, though, for once. Honest, I needed it. A month had passed since the gala and the moment the audience went quiet, and the microphone was taken by the version of myself that they attempted to remove. Silence had changed hands at that period. In the first week, the Valores brand lost 3 partnerships. Cassian discreetly left his position at the company he co-founded. The release of that old recording in which he admitted that they had arranged everything caused their well-prepared smear to fall apart. No miscommunication, a change. Credit was never requested by the assistant who forwarded it to me. All she did was write. She forced us to remove your name. No longer could I. The apology was sufficient. I started receiving emails from folks I hadn't spoken to in a long time. Some expressed shock. Others said they didn't trust Valoris' story at all. I didn't answer. I discovered that as you begin to recover, you stop seeking closure. It stung that my mother didn't call. I didn't anticipate an apology, but I still harbored the hope that she may make an effort to comprehend. She didn't, and she might not. However, this chapter was not written for her. I received an invitation to the new Downtown Cultural Center's Community Art Gala one calm Friday night. It was just warmth, nothing fancy. Regional artists. A polished terrace with little lights hanging over it. I didn't even know why I went until I arrived close to the buffet table nestled between a table of scholarship brochures and simple floral arrangements. I witnessed it. One napkin folded into a leaf shape. It was the same form as the dinner table Cassian introduced me to for the first time. Valera has already mocked the same concept. She had mentioned too precious. But that wasn't a joke tonight. It was a signature, a nod. Aaliyah was a couple of feet away, silent as ever, arms folded. He gave me a little smile as we looked at each other. He took a drink of something and told them it was your stuff. Amber. That evening, a scholarship was named in my father's honor. I was unaware of those who work behind the scenes until the host read it out loud. I briefly forgot to take a breath. Later, Elias and I strolled along the Colorado River's bank as the throng dispersed and the sky grew darker. "Do you feel better now?" he inquired. I gave a headshake. Not much better, just more precise. I no longer felt the need for vengeance. Something more subdued, sharper. A clear distinction between the person I was and the person I chose not to be. Once more, I informed him that they had written me out, but I didn't vanish. I took up the pen just now. After that, we didn't say much. We didn't have to. When I got home that evening, I framed a picture that a buddy had taken of me on stage in the middle of a sentence at the gala. Straighten your back. I don't hesitate. It wasn't about projecting strength. The goal was to resemble myself once again. I wrote in my journal. They didn't write this conclusion for me, but I did, and that's what makes all the difference. Those who are most afraid of your voice are sometimes the ones who silence you the loudest. And justice isn't always loud. It's just leaving with your reputation untarnished. Has your tale ever needed to be reclaimed? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them. Story 4. Hi there. I'm Odilon. According to my family, I failed. Too soft, too quiet, too unseen to ever be significant. At meals, they made jokes behind my back, called me jobless, even removed my name from the business I founded. I allowed them to do so for years. They believed they had them under control and dismissed them both until the day I entered the boardroom. Here's the bit they didn't anticipate, though. If your own father had called you a mistake while paying a paycheck that had your signature at the bottom, how would you have responded? Tell me where you're listening from tonight before we start. What's more, would you have said nothing as I did, or would you have said anything earlier? When I got out of my car and gazed up at the steakhouse's brilliant gold letters, it was almost 7:15. I hesitated a moment longer than I should have. Everything I already knew was shown to me by my reflection in the glass door. This is not what I was dressed for. I had crumpled my jacket on the passenger seat, causing it to wrinkle. My shoes didn't go with it. I entered, even though I hadn't had time to clean the lint off my pants. I was shown through the restaurant by the hostess, who smiled courteously, a bit too courteously. She continued with a hint of something in her voice. They're already seated. I feel sorry. Curiosity. For a family supper, the table was too long. Chairs with high backs and dark wood. Pearl's father was wearing a golf jacket, and everyone else was their mother. My sister Isolde, wearing her typical soft pink cashmere, is encircled by her circle of admirers, while my elder brother Nathan is looking at his phone. I received a couple short nods and stares. No one got up to welcome me. I took the seat. Just past the swinging door that let out kitchen sounds, it was at the extreme end next to the restrooms. Each time a waiter passed by, without saying anything, I slid into it. And then I saw the napkins. Everybody had an ancient name stitched in gold thread on a linen napkin that was neatly folded into a triangle. It appeared to have been steam-cooked. Gregory, even my dad, stated. But mine. There was only one paper towel sheet, not even a paper napkin proper. It was only a cheap square that had been pulled off, folded in half, and placed next to the dish. I gave it too much attention. Nobody spoke, not even a joke. Nothing but quiet. The crueler aspect was that I left it there with a smile. The waiter stopped by to collect orders for drinks. I requested lemon-flavored water. Nathan laughed and stated he was still sober. Well done, sis. It hurt more than it ought to have. The topic of careers came up. It did, of course, always. Isolde glowed. My company is completing a purchase. As she raised her wine glass, she spoke. 50 million assets, both international and domestic. Next week, they're putting their faith in me to conduct the client presentation. They all cheered as if they were in church. Dad grinned and remarked, That's our girl. Some of us leave behind a legacy. Then he came over to me, and a few of us. Try it then. The words weren't the only thing. The delay before trying was the reason, as if he had deliberately avoided gentler wording after considering it. I didn't answer. I tucked the paper towel away carefully after folding it again. Isolde leaned in my direction. At least you have a lot of spare time. Honestly, that must be pleasant. The grind isn't for everyone. More giggling, courteous, managed. Mom even grinned, but she swiftly steered away. In any case, Nathan, how is the deck remodeling in your backyard going? I sipped the water and let the chill to linger on my tongue. They believed I was unemployed. For months, they had held this belief. I quit my last job on my own terms and in silence. I didn't correct what they thought. I gave credence to their whispers. She is adrift. She could be unemployed. She never had Isolde's level of determination. Give them time to reflect, because the floor they were standing on was what I was constructing. I surveyed the table. Cherry wood. All right, china. A bottle of wine that was more expensive than my first post-college income. They didn't even aware they were dining at one of my establishments, and the air smelt like hubris and truffle butter. After putting the leather billfold next to my father, the server came back with the check. Isolde grabbed it. No, I understand. Dad, don't worry. When Odilon is well again, she will be able to treat us. Everyone chuckled once again. Brief and well-managed, like a laugh track from a comedy. I glanced at the waiter. No need, I answered. It's already covered. Is it older? Blinked. Purchased? I gave a nod. Household account. Dad scowled. Home account. What are you saying? I carefully placed the crumpled paper towel back down after picking it up and holding it between two fingers. I looked them in the eyes one by one. "You're sitting in a house." I nodded to the server as I walked by him after gently pressing the napkin down. I didn't wait for their responses to calm down or for another remark. Before anybody had the courage to pose a serious inquiry, I left. The chilly night air felt good on my skin. With my keys in hand, I crossed the street to my car and tightened my coat. Headlights racing by, glasses clinking, and laughter from nearby tables filled the streets of downtown Atlanta. As I got into the driver's seat and shut the door, I let the stillness fall between me and each of them like a curtain. I did not switch on the radio. I made no phone calls. I simply allowed the city to pass by my windows. Still recalling the feel of the embroidered napkin, my fingers were resting on the driving wheel. The irony-dipped, silky feel of it on my fingertips. Just beyond the industrial sector, where the gleam of downtown gave way to fading lettering and drab concrete, I was stopped by a red light. It was still standing when I turned my gaze to the left. The storage facility. Not much had changed. The siding's paint flaking was worse than it had been. The bones were the same as they were 15 years before, but the windows had been updated. I had bet everything on those same bones. I stopped. At this hour, the parking lot was deserted. The humming, sort of silence. I let my thoughts drift while I sat in the car with the motor running. In the past, that building had been everything. I used what little money I had saved from tutoring and part-time jobs to sign the lease when I was 23. The room was empty with only a leaky roof and old cement floors. It was mine, though. I used it as a launching pad. Though I knew no one would take me seriously, I had this idea for logistics automation software that could track, optimize, and anticipate delays before they occurred. Not at that age, not with my name. I therefore made up a fictitious consulting business and pitched under that name. Everything was created from the ground up. Covered all night. I learned how to manage servers on my own. Worked double shifts and sent emails to businesses. One Sunday meal. I told my family about it at the time. It seems like yesterday when I recall this old reaction. She smirked. Fork paused midair and said, "What is this, like nerd fiction? Sounds like something out of a B-list sci-fi movie." Dad didn't even look up from his glass. "You need to think about a real career, honey. Something steady. HR would be a great fit for you. You're organized." They didn't ask questions, just moved on. I laughed along with them that night, but when I got back to the warehouse, I cried for 20 minutes on the concrete floor, then kept writing code. Months later, I landed my first real contract with a major freight company out of the Carolinas. They didn't care who I was. They appreciated outcomes. The system worked. But when I shared a sanitized version of the data out of naive pride, Isolde took it, dressed it up, rebranded it. She presented it to her company like it was her brainstorm. I didn't find out until Thanksgiving. I stepped into the living room and saw my dad toasting her in front of the family. To his older, he said for saving the project at her firm. "She's got a mind like a general. No mention of me, no footnote, no wink, just erased." I stood there holding a pie I'd spent 4 hours cooking and felt my cheeks flush. Mom clapped. Nathan high-fived her. I sat in the corner and stayed silent. That was the moment things shifted. Not only that I was invisible, but that they were rewriting the tale and leaving me out. I didn't correct them. I didn't pick out the emails, the images, the code with my digital signature. I filed everything softly, permanently. I told myself that if I ever got to tell the tale again, it would be on my terms and with receipts. My gaze returned back to the warehouse in front of me. It was no longer a shell. It now housed a shipping startup, one of several under my holding firm. I didn't use my name on most items. I discovered early on that it was preferable to be underestimated. However, I was the one who signed that lease. I owned the structure they disregarded. Additionally, the systems I had created in that very warehouse were used to process every payment my father and sister received. They didn't know. Every office they worked at had a lease signed by the unemployed female they highlighted. I did not look back as I walked out of the parking lot. Like it didn't matter to anyone but me, the warehouse vanished into the mirror. It was a calm journey home. All I could hear were tires cutting the tarmac, and my mind replaying how Isolde had regarded me when I mentioned house account. In front of a sober audience, she appeared to be a magician whose act had just gone wrong. I was more at ease than I had anticipated. I didn't bother unpacking my purse when I arrived home. I drank a glass of water, kicked off my heels, and waited for the quiet to subside. There was no laughing reverberating through my condo's walls. However, at least they didn't resound with condemnation either. I went to bed after leaving my phone charging on the kitchen counter. I woke up to the sound of buzzing around 6:38 a.m. Ping, ping, ping. Before I touched it, the screen sprang to life. In the family group chat, there are 27 unread messages. I kept my thumb over it. I was aware of what I would discover. Before opening that stomach tug is familiar. Something you couldn't ignore but didn't ask for. I gave Isolde a tap. Was that a scream for assistance or a flex dad? She has always been dramatic. She was unable to maintain a legitimate work because of this. Don't be hard on me, Mom. She had good intentions. I believe Isolde is experiencing another breakdown. The final word was a smack in the face. Disintegrate. When I stopped going to Sunday brunch after working 80-hour weeks and missed a wedding because I was flying back from Seattle with a signed merger deal in my briefcase, they gave me that moniker years ago. I didn't even blink my eyes. I just saved screenshots by pressing down on the conversation thread. No answer. No defense. Nothing but quiet. It's out of strategy, not weakness. My phone then buzzed once more. Separate conversation. Liam, my nephew. Liam, Antonio. Hello? This morning I noticed the group chat. It's incorrect in my opinion. I simply wanted to let you know that I support you. I stopped. It wasn't pain that made my chest clench. Something softer. Relief, perhaps. There was another message. Liam, too. I spotted this and felt you should include a snapshot even though Dad stated you wouldn't see it. A confidential side conversation. Sold to her spouse. Do not be concerned. When Dad retires, I'll take over as vice president. No, HR or Audilon is taken seriously by the board. She is simply the reserved person that attends galas. I read it twice, then carefully again. The silent one. They came to that conclusion. I wasn't the strategist or the founder. Just someone who chose neutral nail polish and posed well in family portraits. I responded to Liam's SMS. You made the correct decision. Thank you. No hearts, no emojis. Just the facts. I then selected Leave Conversation after scrolling to the bottom of the family group chat options. It made no request for an explanation. I didn't either. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and poured myself another glass of water. I didn't even have to consider it. Emery has 2 assistants. Board consolidation is the subject. The senior personnel list for Phase 1 is attached. Every name was read twice by me. Isolde Aldridge, Senior, Director of Logistics, Franklin Aldrich. Herman Aldridge, Vice President of External Partnerships, serves as Interim President. There was a commonality among all 3. They continued to believe that the boardrooms they entered belonged to them. Correct. They were unaware that I had provided funding for the last round of bridge finance. They were unaware that I was the holding firm to which they reported. Furthermore, they had no idea that their key cards would stop functioning by next Tuesday. Tuesday was not the day I waited. I was at my work by Sunday evening. Outside my window, the city was calm and dark, similar to the quiet that precedes a required storm. I launched a private browser window, reclined back, and drew my laptop closer. Nobody was able to track it down. The access link to Reynolds Human Capital, a consulting business renowned for its corporate culture rehabilitation, was typed by my fingertips. Reynolds was what most people were unaware of. Bought discreetly years ago through one of my portfolio's lesser-known subsidiaries. Executive division of the subject. Review of culture. Instant access to Julia Reynolds' body. Start a thorough audit of every employee under Franklin and Isolde Aldrich. Within 24 hours, anonymous complaint gathering will start. Every discovery should be sent to the board compliance folder labeled Phase 1. No flags, no signatures. Let the data do the talking. Internal grievances started to pour into the inbox by Monday afternoon. Some had just a few lines. Others resembled journal entries, after being ignored for years. "We're fortunate to have a family-run business," he says, "but we're not family. We are expendable." In front of the interns, she referred to me as Grandma in Heels. "You don't get promoted if you're not related to them." Isolde once made a joke at a Christmas gathering. Unbeknownst to them, some people age out of relevance. There I stood. It was my 50th birthday. I read them all, not once, 3 times. An ancient scar was scraped by each line. I believed it to be healed. Inside, they established a little kingdom, something that I made to be flat, equitable, and useful. And that kingship would fall today. Smug brick after smug brick. I was enjoying my second cup of coffee on Tuesday morning when the internal notice sounded. There will be a mandatory compliance review meeting. Time of Isolde. Aldridge, 11:30 a.m. Officer Amanda Roth, Senior Consultant, Reynolds HC, assigned to Conference Room 3C. I didn't grin. I didn't have to. As old as heels reverberated down the marble corridor by 11:15. She entered my office with her chin up and her lips tight, and I looked through the opaque glass. After 5 minutes, my dad stormed into my office without knocking. "What is this?" He spoke loudly. "Isolde was just caught in an ambush. Why in the world are you doing this?" Dylan. Slowly, I put down my coffee. The rim's steam was still rising. The board took the initiative. "You are aware that transparency is a hot topic right now." He gave me a scowl as if I had smacked him. "Do you find this amusing? Do you honestly believe that the best way to prove yourself is to scrutinize your own sister?" Calmly. I folded my hands on the desk. "Although I believe it's past due, you are welcome to submit a formal protest. The procedure currently operates in this manner. Not tantrums in the hallway." He appeared to want to toss something, but nothing within his grasp would save him from seeming foolish. The shaking in the frame stuck with me even though he didn't smash the door when he rushed away. My legal aid. Emery, who was one of the few individuals in the organization who truly understood who I was behind the scenes, received a last command from me that afternoon. The folder should be left on the VPI conference table. No justification. Put a label on it. Preliminary results. Ethical issues. Verify that it's the red-tabbed variety. Just presence, no autographs, no opinion. Before the folder was even opened that evening, the rumors began to circulate. And I was aware of the purpose, if they believed this to be private. Hold off until the board discovers what they have been concealing. The night before the anniversary event, I didn't get much sleep. I was already dressed when the daylight began to peek through my condo's wooden flooring. Dark pants and a navy silk blouse. Hair in a tidy bun. Not a sound. Nothing that demanded notice. Just subtle presence and crisp lines. The same manner that I constructed everything. They wouldn't look. It seemed like a long elevator journey up to the rooftop garden. As usual, above the faint notes of light jazz music, I could hear conversation. No one turned, but my heels clicked on the tiled walkway to the reception. Not a single head turned to look at me. Perhaps it was simpler that way. White seats were arranged in rows facing a stage with gold and navy curtain screens on either side that looped a slideshow highlighting the company's history. I crossed my legs and gently let my eyes to roam the screen after finding an empty seat at the rear that was neither too distant nor too close. There were my designs. I created the UI when I was 23. When I still thought they would be proud, I covered the mock-up in that dusty warehouse. However, beneath the pictures is strong white lettering that highlights Franklin and Isolde Aldrich's strategic objective. Not even blinking. The montage came to an end. The CEO stepped onto the platform. A few board members came next. Cheers! Appropriate giggles at outdated office pictures. My father then came forward for the microphone exchange. His face hadn't changed much, but his voice had become even more assured, as if decades of praise had shaped it more deeply. "I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has contributed to this legacy," he remarked. "A family doesn't get to create anything enduring very often." For emphasis, he paused and grinned down at the staff rows. "Isolde, my daughter deserves special recognition for her leadership vision and strategic acumen throughout the company's formative years." Again, polite applause. Isolde grinned as modestly as she could. Then he looked at my younger daughter Odilon, then toward the rear where I was sitting. "I'm aware that you're still figuring things out. Continue." He laughed softly, as if it were a supportive giggle. A quiet sound was emitted by someone close to me. Another person chuckled, not in a nasty way like if they felt sorry for me. I got up. I didn't stutter or hurry. I continued down the side aisle until the atmosphere changed, until I was far behind the applauding and the music. I finally let out a breath after pushing open the hefty double doors and entering the lower patio. "Continue." Not too far from the party, but close enough to be alone, I sat in my suit on the sidewalk. The echoes of their joy were too loud for me to hear. That sentence. It wasn't only a rejection. It summed up all of my contacts with them over the previous 20 years. "Are you still looking for a place, as though I had been exploring rather than constructing?" I gazed at the fountain in the courtyard's middle. As the early twilight dimmed, the water trickled softly over the string lights. I considered packing a suitcase, heading home, and vanishing. I could. I had the money, the obscurity, and the silence. However, a young intern named Kayla was interrupted by a voice close to the stone archway where two corridors converged. I recalled that a middle-aged executive was reprimanding her. "You don't just knock on a VPI door in the middle of a logistics discussion," he said. "A chain of command exists. You are no longer a college student." She nodded, despite her cheeks crumpling. Last month, it was her who inquired about vendor integrations. Luminous eyes, quick learner. With an armor-like embrace around a file folder, she turned and left. I saw her leave. I recognized the stroll I used to take when I had ideas and no one was interested. I remember being made fun of for asking pointless questions in rooms I wasn't supposed to be in, back when I believed they may be correct. I tightened my hands as I glanced at the lights once again. I would allow them to steal my name, my space, and my credit. I would allow them to enclose me and pretend that I was still learning. However, it is no longer the case. Not after tonight. Slowly, I dusted the dust from my trousers, got up, and walked back toward the corridor that went inside. Perhaps it was time for them to hear my voice if they were brave enough to remain silent. Perhaps it was time for them to hear my voice if they were brave enough to remain silent. Monday morning came with a false sense of peace. The city was buzzing with its typical unconsciousness, and the sky over Midtown were a faint stretch of gray. I parked at the executive garage's 4th floor. As usual, same key fob, same space. However, I wasn't simply turning up today. I adjusted my blazer, tapped the Bluetooth in my ear, and got out of the car. I walked silently toward the service elevator and murmured, "Start phase 2. Without hesitation, my assistant said, "Yes, Miss Aldridge." The system initiated what we referred to as a quiet lockdown as the elevator doors shut behind me. Only back-end selective access changes, no system-wide notices or warning banners. The cleanliness was surgical. The IT security team had already started putting the policy into practice when I arrived at my workplace. I saw the courtyard down below where staff were just beginning to arrive from my window. They were all unaware that by lunchtime some doors will be closed to some individuals. I went to the admin area and logged in. Zelda Aldridge and Franklin Aldridge are at the top of the list, having both had their executive security override removed. I didn't grin. Retaliation wasn't the point here. Control was at issue here. Getting back something I shouldn't have lost in the first place. A notice showed up on my screen at 9:02 a.m. No access. An attempt to connect into the Aldridge Air server was rejected. Then another access was refused. The request to enter the F. Aldridge Financial Archives was denied. I turned to face my helper, who was holding a tablet at the edge of the doorway. Ensure that their responses are recorded. After giving one nod, she walked out of the room. A ripple had already begun to form by late morning. Demanding to know why her credentials weren't functioning, Isolde had barged into HR. I was not required to be present. I had surveillance footage logs and a timestamp. I let the statistics do the talking. However, revenge arrived by lunchtime. A flagged message from Internal Affairs buzzed across my phone. A potential attempt at character defamation is urgent. An anonymous, unsigned PDF that said I had falsified performance reports due to emotional instability is attached. It was tinged with worry, the type that conceals its claws with phrases like unfit and erratic. I learned everything from the file information. It had been made the previous evening on a machine that belonged to his former helper. Before she used that laptop to create her quarterly reports, I had seen its IP address. Careless. I stood up and closed the file. There was no need for a meeting. All I needed was a hallway. At first, she didn't notice me coming. With her face taut with fake serenity and her chin high, she clicked her heels quickly along the hallway. She stopped for just a moment when she saw me. I even remarked, "If you're going to leak fake documents, better encryption at least." She narrowed her eyes after blinking. "You're simply resentful. You weren't picked by Dad." "Did he pick you?" I inquired. "When I was constructing everything you stood on, did you simply talk louder?" Isolde's head cocked. "Odie, he never thought of you as a leader. He didn't even consider you a rival." I moved in closer. "He never saw," I said, "for a period." I didn't wait to hear her counter-argument. Before the pain of what I had spoken had really subsided, I turned to go. I went back to my office and composed a last message to legal. To the Ethics Committee and HR findings of subject wrongdoing. A complete board review is necessary. Isolde wasn't imitated by me. I didn't take after my dad, I just hit the transmit button. After that, I wrote a note in my planner. 10 a.m. on Thursday. Conference room 9B full board. The gathering wouldn't be visible to them? Send out invitations before it's too late. The boardroom door had already latched behind them before they learned the meeting was mandatory. The door clicked behind them as soon as they had entered the meeting room. There was no loud noise, only a neat mechanical lock that made it obvious it wouldn't be opening again very soon. The board was to my left, legal counsel was opposite from me, and I was already seated at the head of the long walnut table. Nobody spoke. The quiet was effective. My dad scowled. "What is this?" Isolde looked around the room, and her heels halted, eyes flitting between the faces. One more check for conformity. Faking a half grin as if it may yet win someone over, she questioned. Calmly, I gestured to the frosted glass behind them. "For secrecy, the doors are shut. You should sit down." After hesitating, they sat down. Very much. Like warnings, the chairs scraped. I leaned a little forward. Even a voice. "Let's get started." I handed the board secretary a pile of documents. The members grabbed for theirs, opening the covers one by one, shell company diagrams, transfer memoranda, and incorporation documents. Then came the actual surprise. My name, majority stakeholder. The place fell silent like a chill breeze. My dad's mouth tightened. "This is absurd. Is it?" I tilted my head in question. "Because the Delaware office of the Secretary of State appears to disagree. Your signature does too." "That's right," I gestured. "Transferring Class B shares to a company that I just so happened to own." His hands trembled only a little as he turned the pages more quickly. Isolde was still standing. She ran her fingertips over the edge of the folder as if it were about to bite. He said again, more to himself than to anybody else, "This is a trick." "No," I answered in a firm voice. "This is the past. I just wasn't in yours." The air was heavy. You could still hear paper being shuffled and breathing. Nothing else until I pushed a tiny black remote control that I had retrieved from my blazer's side pocket. I said, "Let's analyze culture." Voices came first, followed by the crackling of a ceiling speaker. Isolde. Clearly. Half of the teams are coasting. You don't have a voice if you're not family. Next. Laughter. The women left the room as her father spoke. On the back and forth, you save time. One of the board members tensed. Another blinked quickly as he glanced down at the table. I gave it 10 more seconds to play. I then selected pause. 3 months ago, those were taken. Complete with your quarterly off-site refreshments. Someone cleared their throat. I think the board has given too much praise to the wrong individuals. Let's examine more closely at what you've been clapping for, I replied. Another shuffle. At the far end, the legal advisor took out a memo from his own folder. According to him, these and other remarks gathered throughout our research seem to be in violation of the company's ethical code. Clause 14 requires a required contract review where the violations are combined with share manipulation and the concealment of legitimate credit. He made a sale. He was pallid now. My father stopped talking and leaned back. The loudest sound in the room could have been that. The chairman's hands were folded. Slowly, he murmured, "Mr. Aldridge, Miss Aldridge, we need your resignations by today's end of business." My father sold after opening his lips and closing it again. His voice broke. "This is not possible." I fixed my blazer and stood up. "Did you wish to remove me?" I looked at each of them and replied, "To preserve your sense of power. The exact thing you attempted to keep me out of will now be removed from your memory." After that, I turned, went to the door, and gave a nod. The lock behind me snapped open as soon as I reached the assistant who was waiting outside. I revised the conclusion, since they had excluded me from the company's history. My clothing were still stuck to the boardroom air. I didn't sit down or let out a breath until I returned to my workplace. As if it owed me something, I went directly to the window, drew aside the blinds, and gazed out at the metropolitan skyline. "Only this release," I said, turning around and tapping my assistant's phone. The assertion. The press release was all over the place 20 minutes later. The headlines are thunderous. Following an internal ethics shakeup, the company will undergo significant transformation. The new administration says nepotism and bigotry are not tolerated. For the first time, my name appeared on it without any concealment. Aldridge, Autoline. Hundreds and hundreds of texts and emails flooded in. Current supervisors, retired staff members, former interns, and particularly women contacted out. Some people expressed gratitude in entire paragraphs. Others just sent a simple thank you message. It was long overdue, humiliating, and overpowering. I came about it when perusing the online mentions. An old coworker from the early days that I hardly remembered shared a side-by-side picture. One picture was outdated, faded. Wearing jeans and t-shirts, our original founding team was standing in the warehouse, all of us smiling. Near the rear, I was partially hidden by a folding table. The cropped image from the same day is the other picture. However, I'm in the middle of the foreground this time. She constructed it according to the caption. They simply stood before it. It struck more forcefully than I had anticipated. Within hours, the post went viral. Desperation accompanied that virality. That night, while sitting side by side on a beige sofa and attempting to appear unguarded, Isolde and my father went live on social media. She had flawless makeup. He spoke in a theatrical tone. With an almost tremulous voice, Isolde said, "She's been planning this for years." Justice was not at issue here. This was retaliation. My father, who was always understanding, followed up with Odell. "She found it difficult to accept criticism. Although we adore her, she has been manipulating this story to harm the business. Together we constructed." I didn't recoil. Others posted a retort, but I didn't. Anonymous leaks of screenshots from internal correspondence surfaced. Whistleblowers emerged from the shadows. Stories of arbitrary demotions, rude remarks, and exclusion from important meetings were recounted by former employees. Trends became apparent. Within 1 hour, their videos' comments turned against them. One lady stated I was fired after telling HR that Isolde made fun of my stammer. She must have been deliberate about that as well. Another person wrote that her father advised her not to dress too ambitiously. This is instantaneous karma. Silently, I watched it all happen. I then made a little video. I took a seat at my desk. No makeup, no lighting team, the lens and I alone. I responded, I believe in truth, but I don't believe in takedowns. Silence is a weak foundation for success. I kept quiet long enough. I left off the hashtags. No editing, no music. It was not just a trending clip. It struck a chord. After declining earlier that week, our company's stock steadied before rising. Integrity was valued by investors more than denial, and in the middle of everything. Unexpectedly, something occurred. My home address received a delivery, a vintage cardboard box that had been meticulously packed and labeled in my mother's handwriting I hadn't seen in more than 10 years. A sealed package, a charm bracelet, and a few family photographs are inside. I could still read the little faded and occasionally blurred note within. Do not allow them to minimize you in order to suit their universe. You were destined to construct your own. I held that paper in both hands while I sat there for a long time. Her voice reverberated across the ages. I put the message next to a freshly framed picture on my office bookcase later that evening. The warehouse one, the version without cropping, but I was in the spotlight this time. I did more than simply modify the conclusion. This rendition was above their wildest expectations. It had been 3 months. The workplace was quieter now, yet it seemed more lively in some way. Free-flowing conversations took place. Hurried whispers in elevators are over. No more looking over people's shoulders. Just the cadence of individuals working fearlessly and efficiently. There were no double takes as I moved around the main level as I had hundreds of times before. Nobody is attempting to position me. No erroneous presumptions. They were now aware that the cloak was gone. No background pseudonym or borrowed title. I didn't hide behind the majority stakeholder or the project creator. I just strolled and both they and I saw each other. A man in accounting smiled and nodded as he went by me. A facilities management woman waved a clipboard in the shape of a trophy. Even the intern I once helped get through her first briefing on logistics. She raised her head. Later that week, I sat in one of the breakout rooms with the intern. She hesitated, tinkering with the corner of her notepad and tapping her pen. I considered leaving, she eventually acknowledged. I didn't believe that people like us belonged here after everything that had transpired. I saw her not as a supervisor or even a mentor, but as someone who understood what it was like to doubt your own position in a space that had been constructed by others. I understand how you feel. But don't let them teach you to disappear, I added quietly. She didn't weep, but she blinked rapidly, simply grinned and nodded. It was the type of modest success that I used to believe was inconsequential. As it happens, they are the most important. As the days went by. As my father and I grew older, the ambient sounds turned to static. Neither had gone back to work. The consulting legacy of my father vanished into obscurity. Isolde attempted to open her own shop, but within weeks her reputation preceded her and prospective customers began to leave. I'm sure they still held me responsible, but now they did so from a distance in dimly lit rooms that weren't theirs. One evening at home with my mother's words still carefully folded next to my desk, I went back to that letter. I did more than simply read it this time. I put it in a frame. I placed it next to a brand new plaque that said CEO Odilon Maris directly above my computer display. Initials in email footers are no longer acceptable. No more editing speeches by others. There will be no more chairs at table corners. I contributed to creating my voice, my position, and my name. Those mornings were peaceful and calm. Now, I would get to my workplace early, get a cup of fresh coffee, and walk into the foyer where it all began. I had waited for an interview in the same lobby years prior, clutching a CV and wearing borrowed heels. While a receptionist looked straight through me, no one would ask for it. There was now a quote, not a catchphrase or mission statement, etched into the glass behind the same registration desk. Just the plain facts. Not everyone raises their voice. We construct spaces so that everyone else can at last. When visitors read that they stopped. While the new recruits took pictures, I would walk by. Just being there with no announcements or cheers? That was sufficient. I revised the conclusion since they had excluded me from the company's history. In addition, my family attempted to shrink me in order to fit me into their frame, but I wasn't made to fit.